Hey, happy Hawkeye fans. Chad Leistikow here of the Des Moines Register. I cover Iowa women's basketball along with Dargan Southard of the Des Moines Register. We have been tag teaming the Hawkeyes for several years together, and Dargan, we don't do too many live podcasts in October for women's basketball,
No.
but this definitely warrants a special pod. McKenna Woliczko, the number 6 rated recruit in the country. I'm sure you all know this by now. If you clicked on this link, has committed to the University of Iowa. We both have there's probably what 3 or 4 pieces up on our website already. Obviously, had a little heads up that this was coming this morning, but certainly a huge moment for Iowa women's basketball. Dargan, why don't we both start with kind of like the big picture as people filter in, kind of seismic. I wrote seismic moment here for Iowa women's basketball to land someone of this caliber.
Well, first thing I'm hoping and figure that we have some, North Liberty, Iowa City residents in here. And as they know, on the first Wednesday of every month, they test the tornado sirens and they do it at 10 a.m. So literally right after McKenna posted her announcement, the tornado sirens started going off in North Liberty. So I'm gonna say that those were coordinated. But
There you go.
yeah, I mean, there's really, I don't feel like you can over exaggerate this for a number of reasons. I think the biggest thing is this really is kind of the first big significant post Caitlin Clark recruiting moment, which is obviously a big deal because,
Yep.
that kind of started a lot of this momentum that Iowa is still riding. But, they needed something that was separate from Caitlin, that was clearly kind of igniting this next wave of elite success and expectations and all that. And they've come close with a lot of kids, some top 20 kids in the 25 class, even some top 10 kids in the 26 class. You know, Obviously, Iowa has become a much more visible brand over the last few years, and that's reflected in that. But they still needed to get a big one across the finish line, and you could argue that this was the biggest one that they could get across the finish line, just given the national appeal that it took to get somebody from San Jose into Iowa and buy into everything there. Somebody in the top 10 of the recruiting rankings, which if you follow women's basketball recruiting,
Right.
those top 10 players are a lot more solidified and a lot bigger of a slam dunk, A, than on the men's side, and B, than even like, a top 50 kid. So, again, it sends a loud message that Iowa women's basketball is not going anywhere. I think that there was, it was it felt like kind of the trendy thing to do to put Iowa in your top three or your top
Right.
four, and you saw that a lot with these kids. But clearly, there was a barrier there with some of them between considering Iowa and choosing Iowa. And so, for McKenna to break that barrier and be, the first big time recruit to do that since Caitlin, she was already going to be a hit with the fan base, but now I think she slides in to the women's basketball spotlight here and is going to be pretty much a rock star from the beginning, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And I did that story on her in August, leading up to her visit for the season opener against U Albany. She wasn't dissuaded by Mark Gronowski's poor passing performance, apparently, in that ball game.
No.
But but she had visited the year before when Iowa routed Washington. So anyway, talking to her family and her leading up to that visit, it was really clear that they were really focused on kind of the culture fit, the family feel, that type of thing, more so than like who's going to be the highest bidder. Now that stuff all matters still, and
Mm-hmm.
Iowa's going to be pretty good, pretty up there nationally, I think, in rev share for women's basketball. So it's not like Iowa's just selling that and nothing else. But to beat out South Carolina and USC and Ohio State, but especially South Carolina, you were going to have some kind of combination of everything, to get you over the finish line, like you said. Because I mean, South Carolina does have 3 national titles and basically a Final Four every year type of reputation under Dawn Staley.
Long
It's really
list of
hard to
star
replicate.
players in the post too that have
Right.
been
Yeah. Right. She's 6'2". McKenna's 6'2", and I know Kate Harpring was way up. She's a little higher than McKenna in the rankings, and is more of a ball handler. And that was kind of the biggest name that Iowa was kind of in search of during this whole process. And I would even argue potentially that this is more of a big get for this particular Iowa program because they don't have a player like McKenna Woliczko. They haven't had a player like her. She's 6'2". She's an incredible rebounder. She can score from anywhere. She's a great ball handler. She's like, the thing that people talk about with her is she's actually a tremendous defender, can guard any position. And so, like, Iowa just hasn't had that. I mean, you think about who's played the 4, let's say, the last couple of years. Like, it's just not that type of person. It's been a Falter, and then these are great Hawkeyes for sure. But you don't have the size that Woliczko has, and just the absolute skill. Falter, Martin, even Warnock was a really good player, but not quite. I mean, Woliczko just it looks like she's going to be like great in every aspect. Anything you want to do with her, you can do with her. So, I guess just striking that balance is what I'm saying was so key in terms of yes, they needed her on the court, but they also found a way to sell her on this family thing that Iowa has going. And I mean, we know it's real because we've covered it for several years, and people don't leave here, but it was really, I think, encouraging for Jan Jensen to see that kind of come to fruition, that you can sell that and get to the finish line with a big time recruit. And now there's more potentially coming.
Yeah. And, obviously all the things that were touted when Jan Jensen took this program over from Lisa Bluter about a year and a half ago, it was easy to recite those things in the moment, but they still had to hold up on the recruiting trail. Everything about the family, the culture, that still had to resonate at a level that somebody like this could latch onto it and, be intrigued by it. And so, there hasn't been a ton of criticism of, Jan Jensen taking over, but this really, I feel like, solidifies that was certainly the right decision, and keeping that continuity was worth it. Because, I think it's fair to argue that if Iowa goes a different direction with its coaching change, then, you don't really know what this past year would have looked like. And maybe that makes the program not as appealing for somebody like McKenna Woliczko, because as we've indicated, her options were elite. They were the top of the top. This wasn't a situation where South Carolina kind of backed off and, Iowa got the green light. I mean, South Carolina was in there all the way to the end, and certainly, would have liked to give Woliczko down to Columbia. And so, I think we've talked about it, and I've heard it mentioned other ways that, as big as getting Caitlin was, she was right down the road, and she was an Iowan, and she, had Iowa highly ranked pretty early in the process. But to appeal to somebody who's not from Iowa, not from the Midwest, from the West Coast, where, the West Coast basketball scene women's basketball scene is certainly picked up, to go in there and have everything that you have to sell resonate. I think you could argue that it's a more significant land just in that just in those parameters. Obviously, we'll see how Woliczko's career goes, and there's going to be a lot of expectations on her pretty much from the beginning, the way that there was with Caitlin. But, I think in terms of reestablishing what people view Iowa as in the recruiting world right now, I think there was a little bit of gray area right now in that, okay, they had this big, momentum burst. What exactly can they do with it after Caitlin? And, I think this certainly sends a resounding answer of what they were able to do with it. And that's quite a lot. And, as you indicated, Addison Bjorn just wrapped up her official visit. Jenica Lewis scheduled to come in, I believe, the weekend of the Minnesota game in late October. So they got about 6 weeks or so here left until National Signing Day. And, if this is kind of a domino that knocks over a couple more, and this ends up being, 3 top 25 kids in a 2026 class. That Iowa just hasn't done anything like that before. Going back through,
Right.
I
Yeah, it's
was
so
going back.
funny because Caitlin, I mean, it's basically Caitlin and no top 100 kids.
Yeah,
I
right.
mean,
Well,
except for like Addie O'Grady or something, you know what I mean? Like, but there wasn't even a factor.
yeah, and so I was going back through the
It's amazing to think about that Iowa
yeah,
did that with Caitlin and no other top 100 kids,
right.
basically.
Because I mean, so ESPN archives their women's basketball recruiting rankings back to 2008, and the only stretch during that run where Iowa didn't sign a top 100 kid in back-to-back classes was 2017 and 2018, which was the building blocks for the national title runs. But
Right.
it just indicates that Iowa wasn't getting players like this really at any point in the last 20
Right.
years.
That's what we're saying. They haven't gotten, except for Caitlin, haven't gotten this type of
Right.
look.
I mean, this is the only other top 10 prospect in that time frame that they got was Sam Logic, which was, pushing
True.
15 years ago.
True.
But I mean, they weren't even getting top 50 kids consistently. The 24 class that had Stremlow, Guyton, Mulaney, and Hayden in it, those were 4 top 100 kids, all 40 plus. And that was like a eye-opening thing that Iowa signed 4 top 100 kids in the same class. So that just kind of accentuates the recruiting realm that Iowa operates in and how it's vastly different from where it was certainly pre-Caitlin and even recently. So I think that there's a very good chance that this opens doors to other potential down the road. Obviously, Addison and McKenna were Team USA teammates, very close. I'm sure McKenna has been giving her best recruiting effort there as well. So it could be a big day just based on McKenna's decision, but there's certainly more potential for this to have an even bigger snowball effect in the coming weeks.
Yeah, some fun videos have come out. Her dad shared with me one that I think is out there now that George Kittle and Claire, of course, Claire Till, his wife, Claire Kittle now, shared with like a message to McKenna Woliczko, of course, Bay Area colleagues now, Bay Area Hawkeyes now. Of course, how happy that they think she'll be there. There's a video that 247 Sports, I think, posted. It was from Iowa that showed McKenna, the moment when McKenna committed to Iowa, asking Jan Jensen on the phone if number 20 was available. So it looks like she's going to be wearing number 20 at Iowa, a la Kate Martin.
Good one to pick.
And everyone went. Layla Hayes was in the photo, and Layla retweeted. I just retweeted that if you guys want to check the video there. But Layla Hayes, I mean, she has been, from what I had heard, even before the visit, had been a real asset in recruiting McKenna Woliczko because they really hit it off. On that first visit, that was when, I think that was the weekend.
That was when
committed,
Layla
right?
committed. Yep.
Yeah. So that was Jan's first commit, like her own commit.
Right.
Post Bluter. That was Layla Hayes from Wasilla, Alaska. Okay. The number 64 prospect, I think, which is, a very nice get. I mean, probably should be ranked a lot higher if she wasn't from Alaska, but they connected on that visit way back when. And it was I just want to point out that the fact that Layla Hayes, got here in June, you guys know, hopefully that you read the story I wrote on her coming into Iowa, just like how much she loved Alaska and how hard it was going to be to leave home. And the fact that 4 months later, basically, like she has become like this selling point of how great Iowa is and how much she feels at home here, like 3,000 miles away from Alaska. And I think that you cannot understate that value of that family feel type of culture as well. And just, how they get along already, and that's kind of what McKenna and her dad kind of told me they were looking for. And so it just fits. And I know that, and you bring up Addison Bjorn, that her dad's the one that kind of like opened the window for Woliczko and Iowa to really hit it off because Addison Bjorn's dad was saying just how telling Aaron Velichko how much like the Iowa culture is just like second to none, and like, and that's exactly what the Velichkos were looking for. That's what the Bjorns are looking for. So that's why you see it seems encouraging. And now Bjorn's got to go to is going to UConn yet on her visit list. So, there's nothing. I'm not saying they're going to get her, but it's certainly Iowa's in the mix here for the number 9. She's number 9, right, in
Yep.
247 Sports. So, and then Jenica Lewis has gone from a lot of people thought maybe wasn't even going to consider Iowa seriously to now very heavily considering Iowa, and she's the 22. Number 22 prospect. So, like you said, big deal. And then I don't know. What else? What about the on-court fit? What about the on-court fit now? Let's think about a lineup. Okay, let's take Bjorn and all them out of it. Bjorn and Lewis. Let's say they don't come. Whatever. But even just with Velichko next year, what does this lineup look like?
Yeah, I think there's some logistical benefits there. Obviously, Hannah Stolke is going to graduate, so that 4 position is going to be wide open. As far as what she can do, you're going to have Addie Deal get through her freshman year in whatever role that she has. And so you figure that she's going to be, a year more seasoned. You're going to have junior Ava Hayden, sophomore Layla Hayes, and then, all the transfer gets from this past offseason. And so it feels like this year will be kind of a good warm-up year for everybody for when McKenna arrives, because as we know, there's a lot of young pieces, a lot of new pieces on this team that are going to be there in theory next year when McKenna gets here. And so I feel like that, when she comes in, the nucleus around her is going to be a lot more established even than it is right now, where there's a lot of confidence going into what is another, promising campaign. So I think it really sets up for McKenna to come in and be, the centerpiece of pretty much everything they do. I don't know if it's going to be quite as here's the keys, don't wreck the car, the way that they were with Caitlin pretty much from the second that she stepped on campus. Obviously different positions, so there's some differences there. But I feel like the trust and the belief and the the responsibilities for her are going to be large pretty much from the second that she gets here. And so, I think obviously she is coming off an injury, is going to be supposed to be ready to go, I think, by the end of next month.
Yeah, I think October 29th is the date for full contact is what.
Yeah, so she should be that should all be behind her by the time she gets on campus. And so, I think that there's a lot of promise for how, this Iowa system can run and operate with McKenna, being one of the focal points of it. And so, again, I think that there's a lot, if you get a recruit like this, you obviously build around that and tailor things to what she can do the best. But even beyond that, logistically, I feel like that there's a lot of positives with this roster of where it will be, when she jumps in and takes off from there.
Yeah, she's definitely got that mindset of being like a team first person. So I can see her. I mean, she's going to do whatever Iowa needs the most, and that's another great attribute about her is she's not coming in making demands about where she wants to play or whatever. Now she wants to be developed as a true wing because that's where their goal, and I know this sounds a little bit bold or brash or whatever, but their goal is to be the number 1 pick in the 2030 WNBA draft. I mean, that's what her dad told me. And so what school gives her that best chance? That they believe Iowa is, and for her at 6'2", you're not going to be a post in the WNBA at 6'2", so she's going to have to play on the wing eventually. But it doesn't mean she's going to start at the 3 right away. Maybe I think the 4 is the most obvious natural fit, unless Jan's going to go with a Hayes Hayden combo up front. You know what I mean? So, to me, I just think options. What's that?
You said that's some hefty front court options.
Yeah, I mean, we might see that this year some. And that's what's going to be fun about this coming season is just sort of seeing how they kind of orchestrate, what these pieces are. How good is Hayes right away? I think she's going to be pretty good. Hayden, how good is she? Like this year, now that she has the kind of the 5 position herself. And then, I think Deal's going to be tremendous. So, you throw you know, deal, pick your guard, pick your other
Mhm.
guard next year. Is it Chit Chat? Is it Bjorn? I mean, if Bjorn comes in, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm talking 2026, 2027. You know, and then you know Woliczko, Hayes, Hayden. You know, you got Stremlo in there, you got Mulaney in there. But I mean, let's give a shout out to Taylor Stremlo. It's from everything I've heard is she is kind
Yeah.
of like for lack of a better comp, the Kate Martin of this roster, where she is just, you know, she's the one bringing everybody the glue, right?
Yeah.
Bringing everyone together, and she was pictured with Addison Bjorn on this past recruiting visit. I mean, you can just see, I mean, every time you talk to Taylor Stremolo, it's just such an unbelievably positive vibe and just someone you want to be around. And you know, that's the type. That's also we talk about these stars coming in. Those are the types of players that really are going to help
Absolutely.
Iowa thrive. If you want to make another Final Four run in say 2 years, that's the type of player. Those are the type of players that are going to get you across the finish line along with you know, behind these stars.
Right. Because I mean, if you go back to obviously the two, you know, title or Final Four runs, I mean, for as much talent as on that team, you know, you had unranked Kate Martin kind of being what kept everybody together. And so, you know, I think you need that when you have these high end players who, you know, even if they you know have the team first mindset, these are players that are used to being the stars and the focal point and the centerpieces on their team. And so you need people to make all that mesh together and you know have it come together on the court because you know getting a talented roster doesn't necessarily guarantee that everything is going to mesh together, but Iowa has shown that you know when it does get these talented pieces to go with you know maybe the more traditional recruits that they get, they know how to bring it all together. And so you know I think that there's a lot of excitement for what can be ahead. I do know perhaps this is a little bold in looking ahead, but the Final Four this year is in Phoenix. But after this year, the next two are Midwest friendly locations in.
Ooh,
Uh, so McKenna's freshman year, Deal's sophomore year is in Columbus, Ohio. And
really?
then
Wow.
uh, probably the more intriguing one is McKenna's sophomore year, Deal's junior year is in Indianapolis. And so they actually just announced
Wow.
that and
Jeez.
on top of that, they just announced, I believe, earlier this week that they're going to move the championship game to Lucas Oil that year. So it could
Just the
be,
championship or the Final Four
I think the
too?
Final Four and the championship.
Yeah.
So the whole Final Four. So I mean, obviously, you know the potential there is quite great for another Iowa Indianapolis mashup of basketball fun. So you know, again, it'll be interesting to see how you know everybody kind of gets another run back with these level of expectations because even you know regardless of how this coming year goes when McKenna gets here I'd imagine the expectations are going to be pretty high and pretty solid pretty much from the beginning. And so you know even though it's going to be another wave of players from the two Final Four runs, you still got a lot of the coaching staff, um, or some of the coaching staff, Jan, Abby, who were on that. And so it'll be interesting to see how everybody kind of handles those big expectations again when they come, because Iowa, you know, for the most part, handled them pretty well when they were there, you know, in recent seasons. So that's probably getting a little ahead of ourselves as far as future talk and all that. But you can see easily why the excitement is there and that it's not going to be going anywhere because you know we expect them to announce that season tickets are going to be sold out here for a third straight year pretty soon.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that announcement is going to be coming. So um, the
That's
you
the
know,
selling
what
point too. Yeah.
yeah, what McKenna's coming into, the Iowa fans have kept afloat and kept pumping momentum
Right.
into you know this program since Caitlin left, and so I think that's a big part of it as well. You know,
And
it's easy to break.
give credit to Beth Getz too for. I think this. I should have put her in my column honestly because, you know, she made the bold move of going straight to Jan Jensen. And I'm not saying they've arrived and they're going back to the Final Four. Everyone, I'm not saying that, but you know that it feels like maintaining that continuity was really the smart move because you kept
Yeah,
Deal, you kept Hayden, you kept all those players. I haven't even mentioned Emily Rodriguez yet. They think she's going to be a star once she figures it out. and that's an incredible piece to have. You're going to have her for 3 years. I'm really excited to see. I think this year might be a bumpy for her, maybe at least the first part, but
Mhm.
I think Rodriguez too. I should have put her in my starting lineup for next year as well, with Woliczko. So you think about if you do get Bjorn, obviously that's pie in the sky. But man, it's a fun roster to think about what you could do. We had some comments here, Dargan. Eli Zoski asked about what does the scholarship distribution look like? How many can they even sign in the class of 2026? I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they're at 14 going into this year.
Correct.
7 sophomores, 6 sophomores. I guess Kanice is considered a junior but could redshirt. So let's say it's 3 freshmen, 6 juniors. I'm sorry, 3 freshmen, 6 sophomores, 1 junior, 4 seniors. That's the distribution. So you lose 4 seniors, so they could sign up to 5. So
Right.
there's really, I wouldn't worry about that too much, because you can go to 15 in women. I think you go 15 in men now too, right? Didn't they change that?
So anyway. Kylie, Taylor,
Kylie,
Jada,
Hannah.
and Hannah come off the books after this year. So
right, they're all done unless they get hurt or
right,
medical or something. I mean, this is it for them. No COVID years remaining.
Yeah. So
think, right, for that group. So
I don't think so.
No,
I think we're finally done with
past
those.
the COVID years finally.
Yeah, because I think Kylie's. Kylie. Yeah, well, so the 6th years. So if you got hurt, if you're a true freshman the COVID year and got hurt, this would be your 6th year. So there's probably some 6 years still floating around out there. But I think after this year, everybody who was in school for COVID will be out of school. So that'll be a nice hurdle to have cleared in the.
Let's see. I feel like there's one other comment I wanted to address. Does Bjorn have a timetable? No.
Yeah, I think that one's going to go pretty much up to signing day.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be shocked if she doesn't take the UConn visit. So you're going to have to. I'm not saying sweat that out. I'm not saying where Iowa is, and I don't know if they're the favorite or not, but it'll probably be one of those where it comes down to like Iowa and UConn. I'm guessing for her.
And it is worth noting that with Iowa operating in this different recruiting realm, and I wrote about this a couple weeks ago. This is kind of the norm with these elite prospects. They take it all the way down to signing day. I remember Caitlin Clark committed, I believe, the day before signing day in 2019. So, it's kind of a tough spot to be in because you have a lot of pending things that you can't fully check as good, happening or not until, kind of this final push before signing day. But as it shows, if you keep the patience there, but stay aggressive in, pitching what you have, then, it can all come together at the end. And, if Iowa finishes this off with a couple of more high-end 26 commits, then, as much as was a bumpy ride, to get to this point, at times I'm sure you like the end result and you'll take it, even if it, requires, I think the days of Iowa having its class wrapped up, months before signing day are probably finished. But you take the trade-off if it leads to something like this.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us, everyone, on this kind of emergency pod. Appreciate you guys jumping in, and make sure Dargan's got a couple links up already. My column's up already. We'll actually hear from McKenna herself. We've got a 5 p.m. Central Time Zoom news conference, so Dargan will be on there for sure. I might be as well. I've got some kid pickup duties to do, but I know you'll take care of it if I can't. So appreciate you guys tuning in. You'll get this up on like Spotify and all that too, right, Dargan?
Yep.
So
Yep.
Appreciate, so you can catch the audio version there, share it with your friends. Thanks for following us here. Chad Leistikow, Dargan Southard, saying so long on this wonderful win